But the theme of today's call, and if you're familiar with Cyber Crucible, a big thematic of what we do here is automation and helping folks in the SOC get more impact out of the work they're doing through automation, just because we can't always scale our people to cover everything that needs to get done from a task standpoint and alert standpoint instance. But we're seeing a lot of information in the news about ransomware attacks, and they're growing and changing quite a bit, and they're really increasing in sophistication. So today the focus, and I'll pass it to Dennis here in a moment. First, what we're going to do, and thank you for staying muted. If you do have questions throughout, it is a pretty small group today. Go ahead and unmute either in the middle of the session, but also at the end, we've saved some time for Q&A. But first, Dennis is just going to walk through three use cases of ransomware in the news that we've been seeing. Baltimore, the two Florida city cases, and even though they were both in Florida, they were not created equal, but there's some learnings to take away from those, as well as the Norsk Hydro case, which is an aluminum manufacturer based in Europe, but their global operations have been impacted by ransomware. Then Dennis is going to take about 3 minutes to talk about just some of the different ransomware tradecraft, which has been super challenging to keep up with because the variety and sophistication is increasing. And then Dennis is going to hop into the video of the demo of the ransomware decryptor capability, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So with that, I will pass it over to Dennis.
Hi, everyone. I'll ask, how are you, even though you're muted? So ransomware has been a major focus for us in the short term. We have, seen multiple cities that have been hit. We actually interviewed an insurance executive who was involved deeply in the cyber insurance world, and he confirmed what we suspected, which there's a lot more going on that's not being announced. We're just finding about the stuff that is public because it is required to be public. We take the Florida cases where a police officer was tricked into clicking an email. It should be important to note that the attackers, we love to find a scapegoat, but the attackers really are attacking everyone, and it takes a very small, almost thoughtless action to cause a whole lot of damage inside the company, or in this case, inside the city. So what happened was they had a very advanced version of ransomware. That's the trend that we'll be talking about and discussing. And it was actually cheaper for them because, of course, there were lives on the line at that point to bring the organizations back into business. And there was an insurance claim, of course, cyber insurance, and there were ransoms paid because simply that was their quickest way of getting back into business. We see where Baltimore took a little bit different angle. It also was an advanced piece of ransomware that hit very strong, properly implemented encryption that was taking down the city's ability to generate revenue, to do collections. They chose to not pay the ransom, which of course is everyone's right, and they have incurred a financial penalty for that, in that we're up to $18 million so far in what the ransomware recovery costs are. The city's inability to operate. Of course, I am from Baltimore, so we also got to experience some of the issues. It was very real, and it impacted, and it's still impacting people's lives. And so there is some question of whether paying the ransom or not was a smart decision. That's a horrible, horrible place to be, and we're going to talk about how we can change that dynamic. And of course, Norsk Hydro, they also chose not to pay the ransom, not to give additional revenue towards the attackers. As fines go up, and we've heard recently that fines are rapidly escalating above $1 million now. These are not small attacks and are small costs. Norsk Hydro is looking right now at the recovering. They've lost some ability to conduct business operations and produce aluminum. They've had a lot of internal, we'll call it, gnashing of teeth, to use that term, in terms of getting back into business and recovering. It has been an extremely expensive exercise for them. Of course, the attackers are watching this, right? What they see is opportunity to incur additional costs and additional fines onto companies that are under attack. None of these numbers are helping all of us trying to be in business and stay in business and serve customers. What it's doing is it's helping attackers know they can charge that much more in case of a ransomware attack, which honestly, I think we know that the hackers do get in and that there will be issues. So in terms of Tradecraft, it's good now to discuss the increase in maturity in ransomware. I think anyone who's following the news is seeing the targets are getting bigger, the costs are getting much more expensive. What we're seeing on the cyber tradecraft and the the expertise side of how ransomware works is that they are closing the encryption holes, which cause some easy wins for researchers or from remediation companies back in, quote unquote, back in the day as long as 6 months ago. These holes are being stopped. The encryption being used now is NIST compliant and it is properly implemented. So those encryption holes are being closed. The attackers are getting better. It's no longer grandma's laptop that is being broken into, or possibly one person in sales. It's no longer a workstation issue. What the hackers are doing is they're doing things such as navigating throughout the business. They're finding out where the business's most valuable data is. They are making sure that access to backups is not available, whether I see that being deleted outright or the backups themselves are being encrypted. Sometimes that is automatically happening, actually. I see where infection might happen to for instance, a workstation, and then automatically any network shares, such as file servers available to, we'll say, someone in accounting. What we're seeing is that those network shares and those file servers are also being automatically encrypted. So we have a combination of more APT type breach activities along with these more saboteur explosions, really, where resources are denied to companies. And unfortunately, increasingly, what we're seeing is that these free decryptor tools, while they were a great resource back in some of these older versions, of course, the hackers or the ransomware attackers are also seeing this and are getting lessons learned in how to make a more mature encryption tool. So what we're seeing is that it's increasingly difficult to be able to use these decryptor tools that are out there simply because those were the quote unquote good old days, and the hackers are using better encryption and they're using non-vulnerable tools right now. So many of you have seen us before, I believe, especially with Matt, making some phone calls and getting the word out about Cyber Crucible. That's a good point to discuss the difference between the two of them. So Cyber Crucible is an excellent automation tool for discovering and analyzing breaches. And Zen Siphoner, is the tool we're using to address the ransomware problem. Two very different problems in terms of how it affects businesses. If you think of Cyber Crucible as dealing with the spy who breaks into your business and steals files and in the dark, sneaking away with your goods, whereas Zen Siphoner is more where we have like a saboteur who's breaking into your office and destroying items, removing them from you having access, demanding ransoms. Two very different behaviors for an attacker. We are seeing where there's crossover, where a breach does occur. Cyber Crucible can pick up the breach, and then we can watch the attacker goes to the most valuable data. And instead of stealing it, they may just decide to encrypt it, at which point you have both Cyber Crucible and Zen Siphoner at play to deal with the breach, detect it before they get to that point, hopefully. But if not, if they're just moving too quickly, they've done too much reconnaissance on your business, then what can happen is if the ransomware is dropped, Zen Siphoner, what we can do is we can be there to decrypt your files and get you back in business quickly as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to a demo. We're going to show how a junior resource could have really changed the outcome in these attacks. I should note that the Locker Gaga ransomware that was used in the aluminum plant was actually using some of the same encryption techniques that we are going to demonstrate here. That was actually just by coincidence. I just chose a very strong target to work against first to demo in terms of encryption ability for the ransomware. So just to stop here, what we're doing right now is we're demonstrating that licensing is on an e-commerce model where licenses are easy and painless to purchase, and they can be assigned to agents. So right now we have one of our lead product developers, Kyle, that we recorded him creating an agent. So he was assigning a license to an agent. He's building it. It's a very seamless process. We are punching in all of the high security settings, all the variables, so that communication can occur very quickly and easily. And here we see it's automatically being built, and all of the special passwords are being put in so you can communicate with the cloud very securely. And he is going to download the agent now and then run it. Once that agent is running, what it's doing is it's doing very targeted collection of what we call crypto variables and potential crypto variables. You see here that the ransomware is now being run. The agent, our agent, Siphon, of course, is working in the background, and unfortunately a ransomware attack has been started against the victim. So what we see is that what we had before was a text file. We have, those are being turned into encrypted blobs, which cannot be read. I should note that it's using, this ransomware we found is using very strong AES 256-bit encryption that is NIST certified. The variables are randomly generated. What that means is that you can't just take the keys and the variables from one machine and apply them to another. In addition, there are unique variables per file. What that means is that you can't even take one key or one set of variables for one file and apply them to the next. This is very advanced encryption. This is something that unfortunately the hackers have learned all the tricks, and it's a relatively new version of ransomware in which there aren't any easy wins. However, what we're doing is we are applying our machine learning algorithms in the agent along with a lot of heavy lifting in the cloud. And what we're actually going to show you is that the combination of on-device analytics and in the cloud analytics is going to provide for you a capability to actually decrypt very quickly and very easily, despite all of these, all of the hackers honestly doing a lot of really great things. It's just unfortunately that they're the bad guys. So we see here where an encrypted file is being submitted. We try to ask you to give us a little more detail. What that does is, well, it doesn't stop us if we don't have something, for instance, like original file name. What that does for us is it lets us be more efficient in our actual processing and then our analytics. We know how to focus our analytics a little bit better based on that. So Kyle's going to go ahead and upload an encrypted PNG. The PNG is an image file. And what he'll do is he'll download the decrypt program. It is trying and is using a variety of variables. In this case, let's say there's keys and other variables that are being applied. And what's happening is that despite all of the very advanced protections of the ransomware, we were able to successfully decrypt and bring the business back, bring the workstation back into running successfully in the business. And you see here where, despite there being encrypted text, which he kept around, we're able to show exactly what the decrypted text actually was.
Well, Dennis, awesome. I have a question. So if we were to just bottom line it for folks, we see Robinhood and Rook, or even a couple years ago, WannaCry ransomware and the Norsk ransomware you mentioned. If we were to bottom line it, what types of ransomware is Ransomware Rewind capable of decrypting, and what should we know about that?
That's a great question. So what we're doing is we're providing a capability. We are getting one step ahead of the hackers, and we're going to stay there. We're giving a capability that will actually, that is effective against the modern versions of the ransomware that we're seeing people struggle against. It will work against the old ones as well. What we're able to do is actually use a whole bunch of machine learning and crypto analytics to even remove that uncertainty from victims, where they don't have to try to figure out what the ransomware version is. They can submit it to us, and we're going to do a whole bunch of work in the background and able to provide, older versions, yes, and newer versions of ransomware. We're able to come back with the decryption very quickly and easily, just like we showed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's helpful. And something else we've been running into, Dennis, that we've been considering is beyond the decryption capability, things like cyber risk insurance and process involved in terms of buy-in from executive leadership team down. preparing for ransomware hacks, if in fact they're going to be inevitable. Let's move a level up from technology for a second. What are your thoughts on just some of the cultural things that need to happen in the business to get prepared for ransomware?
Yeah, that's great. Great point and a great question. So there is no easy button, unfortunately. This is a very difficult risk management situation, issue. However, what we're doing is we're using Crucible and using our automation play against the ransomware problem to provide that a much more effective and cleaner risk management program for a business. It's no longer a situation where they have an almost certainty of having a payout of an uncertain amount, but we know it's growing based on our discussions in the insurance industry. So instead of having that 7-digit payout or even higher, depending on what's going on in the business, how large the business is, now we get to see where it is, we're turning ransomware and the entire breach environment, the entire breach strategy, we're definitely attacking ransomware as something that can be managed effectively and in a cost-effective manner with easy deployment. It's easy to understand what's going on and providing immediate value to businesses that are hit.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing, it's a programmatic approach. The technology, the decryptor capability is one component of being prepared for this, which I think maybe leads me to my next question. So when we're thinking about when we do get attacked, what considerations should organizations have when we're thinking about paying the ransom or not paying the ransom? Like, when do we know when it's time to pull the plug? Let's pretend, Ransomware Rewind from Crucible was not in the business. How do we think about that?
Right. Well, unfortunately, now that we're hearing that the fines are approaching and exceeding millions of dollars, or 1 million, and we saw that 2 million is now becoming more normal, and going up from there. I'm worried that there's going to be a lot of businesses, such as nonprofits and organizations like that simply just don't have the resources. Right. It's a matter of going out of business.
So not just your big enterprises or large state and local organizations like Baltimore, smaller cities, more of your mid-sized companies getting targeted, so they have to have different considerations.
Right. I mean, the ransomware attackers, what we're seeing is not only a maturity in the encryption, so they're closing those easy button holes that we used to have, but what we're seeing is that their level of automation is improving dramatically, and the scope of the targets that are available to them now include, the small and medium enterprise, where they can inflict a lot of damage, and then very quickly and easily impact the business in a very real financial way. Unfortunately, of course, we know that large businesses sometimes have the ability to recover, more easily. Of course, cities aren't just going to go away, right? Mm-hmm. They're there.
Also, different type of funding.
They do, yes. And so I think as the maturity increases, what I think what's going to happen is paying the fine or not paying the fine has become the only way. Either you suffer or you pay the fine, of which might bankrupt your business. Ransomware Rewind is there to provide the offset for that maturity and say, you know what, you guys, the attackers have some great tradecraft, unfortunately. We're going to match that with next generation cryptographic analysis to provide a very easy and simple solution for companies.
And something that's important, I think, as a CEO and any of us in a more visionary type of role, we're seeing a lot in the news about ransomware today, but what's going to happen the next 3 to 5 years with ransomware, in your view, in terms of what the hackers are going to be doing and how organizations are more standardized in terms of a response?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what's going to happen is that right now, even when you do pay a fine, of which we don't necessarily know what that fine is, but if we know it's going up, we're going to, right now you see where the decryptors might not even work. I think what we're going to see is that as this automation takes hold and more victims are, more and more businesses are targets for ransomware in a more sophisticated way, I think we're going to see that automation help refine the decision on whether the decryptor is going to work or not. Whereas right now, of course, there's questions, does the decryptor even work, right? I think that's going to go away over time. And so we'll know the decryptor works, but it's going to be twice the cost. It's going to be, can you afford that $5 million fine or $10 million fine? I do see where the attackers are going to start being, if they're not already, being more savvy on the knowing how much money the business actually has. Mm-hmm. So a very large corporation, that fine might be, $7, $8, hopefully not 9 digits for a very large corporation, but I can definitely see where that's going to be an issue, especially as they're deleting backups. The Tradecraft definitely is maturing to a point where there's a combination of breach and a combination of ransomware, right? And we are seeing where that is occurring, and getting more and more confirmation from security experts that I speak to that are seeing that kind of tradecraft. I don't know if they mean it to be like an insult, right? After you steal everything, then go ahead and encrypt it. But that certainly is happening in some cases. And so that is definitely, you have the double-edged sword. Now the CISO is dealing with 2 problems, not just one being immediate impact and the next one being a longer-term risk management issue.
Hey, this is Sean. Can you guys hear me?
Hi, Sean. Yeah.
Hey, Dennis, thank you for inviting me to this. It's been great. I jumped in and fell in, and I'm glad you're recording it. So to your point on risk management, so that's kind of the wheelhouse that Cyber6 is actively engaged within the marketplace right now. And you drive home the point of taking it to that top level. I think Aaron mentioned you take it to that top level where take it the next step up where you're identifying these risks within your cyber threat landscape, but more importantly, what's your cybersecurity roadmap look like, right, within the business as it relates to your business? Have you done, your due diligence with going through cyber exercises and being able to particularly target these potential gaps? More importantly, go through the training of your people. To be honest, I chimed in a little late here. I haven't seen the whole demo, but I could see value in the particular offering that you have, and tying it directly into a managed GRC service like ours. So I'm excited to learn more, but I wanted to drive that home. For the audience and for your team specifically, that's what we're actively seeing. We're seeing a huge gap in policy, this huge gap in just they just don't know what they don't know, and if you don't have a security roadmap in place mapped to an appropriate framework, you will have ransomware. Period.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because unfortunately, where we'd love to have a training component and a services component associated with Cyber Crucible sales, unlike in breach circumstances, the ransomware is a bit of a bomb, right? Where there's not really a chance to learn many lessons before you're possibly paying dearly. So I love. Thank you for everyone who attended. We're nearing the very tail end of our webinar. We do have discount codes available that I know that Matt will be sharing with attendees for this to be able to, we want to get this out there as soon as possible. We've come a long way in a very short period of time. As soon as our early research and development identified that we can have some really great successes here. And we would love to see Zen Siphoner Agent and the Ransomware Rewind product get in people's hands as soon as possible. And we would love to help you do that.
I think, maybe just the last thing from me in some of our follow-up we also recently did an interview with a cyber risk insurance expert that I think will be an awesome, it's about 40-minute recording, just some of the grander considerations, because not only is the CISO responsible for, and security director is responsible for the technology side of things, but the process and really pushing this culture of being prepared, like Matt mentioned with the detection and response of the malware, but also when an event actually happens, we have to have buy-in from the top. And cyber risk insurance and other training programs are certainly part of that. So we'll send that out as a resource as well. And if we don't have anything else from the group, thanks everybody for your time. Final words from you, Dennis? You good?
I'm good. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.